Well, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for my lunch. Thanks for making me feel very welcome. You're obviously a fine body of people, and I'm actually very pleased to be with you. I want to also apologise to you for two things. Firstly, you will very quickly realise that I'm not an engineer, so if you've got engineering questions that I can't answer, I'm very happy that you send me a line or route the question back to me. I'm actually on leave next week, but I do commit to answering your questions if I can't answer them today, and you'll get a written answer. So the first apology. The second apology I want to make is that the water industry in the UK is really burdened by number, and I've got my crib sheet here, and I will need to refer to it because I need to quote a lot of numbers to you because it gives the context to the subject matter. I think you want me to talk to you about desalination, and that's what I intend to do, but I need to create the context before I do that. And there's a horrible truth, which is that demand is exceeding supply in the London area. If you cast your mind back 2 years, we had a drought, which was a result of a very dry previous winter. The winter of 05-06 was particularly dry. Our stock of raw untreated water was very low. You may have seen pictures of reservoirs, almost down to the bottom of the reservoir, down to the clay bed. Many of our boreholes, these naturally occurring reservoirs under the ground, were running dry, and boreholes will often lead to the creation of rivers and streams. So the reality was that we were running out of water, and unfortunately in 2006 we had to use law that had been passed in the 1970s related to hosepipe use. So there was some ridiculous paradoxes that you could fill your swimming pool with a hosepipe, but you couldn't water your flowers with it. Completely ridiculous. Hopefully that situation will be sorted out fairly soon. More seriously, and with less publicity, we actually had to approach government to be granted what's called a drought order. Not a great deal of publicity because of its potential impact, which is for us to start rationing supply of water. It was that serious. Luckily, we didn't have to use our drought order, but it was a serious measure. Measures after that relate to taking more water from the environment than is frankly safe for the environment. So that would mean depleting the levels of rivers below what could be safe for navigation and so on. And it damages the environment, it damages wildlife, and it's not good. But obviously people's water use would be temporarily given priority. Well, luckily that didn't happen, but there is a real potential that it could happen again. We take water from the environment, treat it, deliver it to our customers. Happily, our customers give back most of it, about 90%. 10% is lost. About 90% comes back to us. We treat it again and then return it back to the environment. That's the water industry. It's about recycling. We have 95 water treatment works. Thames is the largest water and wastewater company in the UK. To give you some numbers again, we have 8 million clean water customers, and nearly twice as many, we have 14 million wastewater customers, because a number of clean water companies don't treat waste. So we pick that up, if you like. But we're a combined company with 95 water treatment works and 349 sewage treatment works. Geographically, we're as far up as Oxford, as far west as Gloucester and Swindon, as far south as Alton in Hampshire, and as far east as Brands Hatch in Kent. So a major footprint and a capital city as well. So we are the largest combined water company. Now we have three controlling bodies that play a very large part in our commercial lives. Ofwat, which is our commercial regulator, and they're the people that concern themselves with the level of our water bill. We have the Drinking Water Inspectorate, which is the government body that tests our clean water as we deliver it to ensure that it meets standards of safety and hygiene. And then, as we interact with the environment, as we take from the environment and give back to the environment, we're regulated by the Environment Agency. And they actually control how much water we can take from rivers and how much we can take from the ground. They license us to extract water. So we've got price, we've got quality, and we've got quantity regulated by outside bodies. Now, earlier I said that it's predictable. What can we predict? How do the numbers stack up? Well, each of us use about 160 litres a day. When I say use, that's not to drink or wash, and sometimes it's used on your behalf, but about 165 litres a day for every person within our catchment. And yet, there are pressures increasing on that. People are using more water. They use more dishwashers. More recently, power showers have become more popular. Jet washers, car washers, and so on. So consumption is rising. We know that, we can measure it. It's gone up about 20 litres a day in the last 20 years. We've got climate change, and if you listen, there's still a little bit of uncertainty as to which way it's going to go, but absolute surety that it's changing and becoming more unpredictable. We've got population growth. Predicted is that population of Leeds is about to arrive in London in the next 7 years. That's 800,000 people. We've got the Thames Gateway development along the south shore of the River Thames into Kent. And the problem we've got is that if we are using all that the catchment can give us, then we've got to start looking for alternative supplies. Now, politically, two years ago, we were rightly pilloried for the total amount of leakage we have. Mayor Livingston said, well, if you would stop your leaks, then perhaps you wouldn't have a drought. A little simplistic, but not far from the truth if we could stop all the leaks in one go. But we can't. What we are doing is we're replacing Victorian mains. Bless them, when they put them in the ground, I don't believe they expected them to last quite as long as they have. And a lot of the pipes actually are strong enough, it's the joints that are going. Something like half of our mains are 100 years old, and a third are 150 years old, and they've been in the ground for that period of time. They've given tremendous service, but they do leak. So we're replacing them. If you have suffered disruption in London due to mains repair, then you'll know what I'm talking about. We're digging up London. We've been digging up Covent Garden, the West End, Brick Lane, and all over. The plan is to replace 2,400 kilometres in our next accounting period, which is 10 to 2015, and that is estimated to save enough water for 750,000 people. So you see, by replacing the mains, we can actually increase the population, so we can cover that off. We promote water efficiency. It's a strange business model to get your customers to use less of your product, but that's where we're at. In 06, just by asking people to save water, we cut our production by 8%, which was a lot of water, simply by asking people to be more careful with water. So we know that works. Metering. Now, metering has a political dimension which has not yet been solved, which is, we hear now about fuel poverty, the next thing will be water poverty. And because water is about hygiene and health, we could not possibly have a situation where a family runs out of water because they can't afford it. So metering is thought to be the fairest way to charge for water, as we do with gas and electric and other things. But we have to implement that very, very carefully. Our plan is to increase from about 24–25% at the moment to double it up to 54% by 2015. So that's our ambition, to increase metering by 100% in the next 7 years. We're looking very seriously at building a new reservoir in Oxfordshire. great unless you live in Oxfordshire, between Abingdon and Wantage, because that's where we plan to build it. It's the first reservoir built in this country for about 40 years. The idea is to hold back water for longer. Possibly, in dry spells, we might even be able to tip water from the reservoir back into the river to support the river. But it's about holding on to water longer. We hope to start in 2012, and we hope it'll be finished in 2020. A massive reservoir. And now I come on to the topic that hopefully you've all been waiting for, which is desalination. There's no silver bullet, you see. We have to do lots of things simultaneously, and desalination is one. Now, within limits, the sea is an infinite supply of water. And desalination as a technology has been around for centuries because you can use it by distillation. You can heat water, drive off water vapour, leave the salts behind. But desalination in the way that we plan to do it is different, it's high tech, and it uses a natural process, which I'll talk to you about. But 97% of the water on the earth is salty and 3% is fresh. We can't ignore that 97%, we have to look at it very, very seriously. What we're going to do is wait for the ebb tide to get halfway through. We're going to take water from the estuary at the point where it's mixed with fresh water and seawater, and it's described as brackish, so it's slightly salty. And we will draw water from the river in the last 3 hours of the 2 ebb tides in the 24-hour cycle. So water will be drawn out at Beckton, on the North Shore, in the borough of Newham. It's our own land, it's a large sewage treatment works at Beckton, and water will be drawn from there. Desalination, removal of salt as a process, begins exactly the same way as all other water treatment works. You have to filter the water to take out any floating solid, you have to remove algae and bacteria and so on. The process, up until the point of desalination, is identical. So if you go to the plant, you'll see a normal plant and then a desalination as a sort of a bolt on the top. But there are 2 things you have to do when you desalinate seawater. Now coming to osmosis. It may be a while since you studied biology, or it may be you studied it recently, but osmosis is the action that occurs between 2 solutions that are separated by a membrane. And if the concentration is greater in one side than the other, then osmosis occurs because the dilute solution tries to dilute the concentrated solution so that they're both the same level. So it's called osmotic pressure, and water will travel through this membrane from the dilute solution to the concentrated solution. Now that's osmosis. The technology is reverse osmosis. Exactly what it sounds like. By pressurizing the concentrated side, you can force more water from the concentrated side through the membrane into the dilute side. That's the process. But it's a little more complicated than that. It takes 4 passes through the membranes, and the final membrane, with ever increasing pressure, the final membrane is pressurized at 70 bar. Now that would push a column of water over 2,000 feet into the air. It's massive pressure in water terms, not much in gas terms, but 70 bar is immense pressure. And it's used when the most concentrated part of the process is aligned with the membrane to get the last bit of water out of it. It's like squeezing it. Now some people say, what are you doing with the salt? Well, because it's on the banks of the river and because it's in the sewage treatment works, the salt is going into the effluent stream and will be returned to the river. So we're not altering the salinity of the Thames by taking salt out. We're maintaining the salinity. Now, there is a final step when you desalinate, which sounds a bit strange. We have to remineralize it because it's flat. It wouldn't taste well if you drank it. Water does taste. If you go around the country, go around the world, you realise that. We have to remineralise the water by adding back the minerals that we took out almost by accident. We didn't intend to take out some of the carbonates and the sulfates and so on, which are thought to be good for you, good for your teeth and bones. So after desalination, we have to try and mimic the same odour, the same smell, the same taste, the same appearance, because that water ultimately is going to be delivered to our customers, and they need, if you like, not to detect that this is something different. This has to be the run-of-the-mill water that they receive every day. So there's a little bit of a chemistry trick at the end to return odour and appearance. Now, where to go from there? Well, we're building a new pipeline. If you travel along the 406 up to 25, you may have seen some of it. The pipeline is 14 kilometres long from Beckton, travelling sort of north-northwest. Following the 406, it then goes through Little Ilford. It's actually in Little Ilford Golf Course just at the moment. It's not quite finished there. It then takes a bit of a turn to the left and crosses over the football pitches of Wanstead Flats, and then up through Epping Forest, through an area called Bushwood and Leytonstone, under the Green Man interchange, which was only dug up a couple of years ago. So we're not digging it up, we're actually tunnelling under it. Up to the Whips Cross Hospital and then under the road, under the Hollow Pond, and then up Woodford New Road to an area that is called Waterworks Corner, if you know that, and that's where the reservoir is. So the water is being pumped from Beckton all the way up to Woodford in a pipeline which is 1.2 metre diameter. That's the old 42s, the old 42-inch pipes. Ductile iron, brand new pipe, and it's just about 85% done. We're having to tunnel under 7 locations. One is started at the moment under Whips Cross Road, so if you go up that way, you'll see a hoarding, not much else frankly, but what we're doing, we are building shafts vertically into the ground, about 30-40 metres down, and then boring under the ground and installing an outer tunnel, and then the 1.2 metre pipe will be installed into that. So it's quite an engineering feat. Now, you might imagine, of course we have environmental concerns and we have people concerns. The people, we've managed to get this pipe into 95% of open land by using Epping Forest mainly, by using the football pitches. And that means that we've really caused pretty much minimal disruption to residents, people living in those 3 boroughs, Waltham Forest, Redbridge and Newham. We've also held all kinds of meetings, discussions, websites, letter drops and so on. So we've been keeping everybody fully informed of what we've been doing. But also on the environment. I told you that we're burdened with number. We actually moved 600 ant hills that were in the way because they're rare ants. We actually timed a construction to avoid the love life of stag beetles. And we've been harvesting acid grass from parts of the forest and then taking them to where we've been working. And if you go up to those parts now, you'll see that we've gone, but the fences are still there because we're having to protect the reinstatement. We've reseeded the area with native seeds, but we need to keep people off the ground until maybe April, May next year. That's about as much as I can say to you. Please ask me any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Yeah. I bow to seniority.
I saw some of the work you were doing at the golf course.
Yes.
Is that been going under the cemetery as well? You won't be disturbing anybody there, will you?
No, we've been able to bypass that. It's a very, very, very delicate subject. We were looking seriously on the Woodford New Road to go under the St Peter in the Forest churchyard. And this is people's sensitivities now, and we have to take a very, very, very slow approach to that. And in the end, I think we were given permission by the bishop, but still the vicar was very uncomfortable. So there we are tunnelling, but we're not tunnelling, as far as I know, under the church.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, talking of tunnelling, you're talking about the availability of water. I'm interested because there's been a problem with the water level under London rising,
Yes.
quite substantially. Been a lot of talk about the damage to buildings and so on. I know you've constructed at huge expense the ring, haven't you?
Yes.
I think that's complete now, isn't it? Not right.
We're working on it.
Yeah, but I understand you won't be able to use the water from the ring for that sort of use, or I mean wrongly informed on that. It's a grey water.
Where's the grey water?
The ring around London.
No, it's potable
Will
water.
you use it for treatment?
The ring was completed in, it's called a ring, but it's like a sort of flat track, really. A little bit of that. Before the ring was conceived, the job was to shift water from the west of London to the east of London, across London, and that needed a network of pipe, it needed a lot of energy and oomph behind it, and the risk of burst. The ring is about 50 metres down, its internal diameter of 2.5 metre, and it flows by gravity, so there's not a need to push it, it goes round. And what we do, we tip water into it, mainly in the west, at Hampton, Kempton, Ashford Common and Walton, the big four as we call them. And that water then flows around the ring, and what you can see are what we call pump-out shafts, where a shaft is down to the level, and it draws water up to the network level. So it pulls water up the 50 metres up to 1 or 2 metres below the ground level. But it's all potable water. All potable water. What we're doing at the moment, it's another one of my projects, is to build 2 extensions. We're building an extension down from Stoke Newington to Islington, so that we can bring water from Hertfordshire through Copper Mills Water Treatment Works in Walthamstow into the ring. And in the south of London, we're building an extension from Honor Oak into Brixton, because that way we can begin to move more water and be prepared for the gateway developments in the next 20, 30, 40 years. So we're expanding out to the east, and we're sending the ring main that way. But the ring main is a work in progress. There's plans for 2030, 2040, 2050, and just build a greater network. It's all drinkable.
Yes, the desalination plant you were building, what is the output of this? And what would be the cost? I mean, we're talking about forcing water through membranes.
Yes. The output, it's 150 million litres a day, but we can play tunes on that because there are 3 cells, so we can produce 50, 100 or 150. I should say that the early objections to the plant was on energy cost, not so much the financial cost, but the energy cost. It's not a base load plant. It's not there to produce water all the time. It's there to bridge gaps. The energy, we have a commitment to use sustainable energy. If this was a year ago, I'd be singing the praises of biodiesel. We don't do that much now, when politicians started saying that this was taking food off people's tables. There is a secondary biodiesel, which is you produce fuel from non-edible plant or waste, and that's a possibility, but we are committed. Beckton actually burns solid waste to generate power now, so the site is quite green, and we're committed to run the desal plant on renewable energy.
Are there any plants operating in the UK at the moment?
No, not at the scale. There's one that desalinates water on Jersey, and they use that to grow tomatoes and other vegetables. We did a pilot scheme as a pilot plant on the site that's been running for a couple of years because they needed to see how they could achieve the taste smell test, and they could. So they now know that they can ramp up the process. But it's the first commercial scale desalination in the UK.
It was a two-part question, really, because I've got a place abroad and we get our water from a desalination plant. I've had 2 immersion heaters go, British UK product. The person I bought the place off also put a UK immersion heater in his place. He's had his immersion go. So I'm a bit worried about what the water in its finished state is that's doing this, because that's the only conclusion we can come to. It's because it's water from the desalination plant.
Yeah. The water from the desal plant will never be delivered neat. It'll always go up to the service reservoir and be blended. So, and it'll be remineralised.
Yeah, I think ours is neat.
So I think that would go a long way to solve that problem. I mean, it sounds a real problem, but equally it sounds beyond my knowledge as to the cause of it. But I do know that there's never an intention to deliver neat desalinated water, because it would need to be blended with normal water.
I think you said the plant's going to be at Beckton, is that right?
Yes.
Is that the old Beckton Gasworks or something like that? Or what sort of
Do you know where there's an enormous tower that has like a sluice gate that comes down and holds water back in the canal? It's a stone's throw from there. It's that side, and it's literally where you can throw a stone from there to the new plant. It's actually recycling some assets there that have become disused for years. It's not a topic really for after lunch, but it's the old jetty where the sludge was pumped before it was taken out into the estuary. So we're reusing that jetty there.
Thank you.
One last question? No? Well, yes, I think we should know, please, that is there such a thing, therefore, as a kind of anthology society whose care in life is for ants? I mean, who is this person who seems to be caring for ants?
Well, I'm sure you know that Epping Forest is owned by the City of London Corporation.
Oh, it's them, is it?
A lot of people think it's common land. It's private land, and long time ago we met with the conservators.
The Conservatives?
The conservators. And a number of environmental measures were discussed, and the complete reduction or zero environmental impact was pretty much a demand, and we followed their wishes as the landowner.
Just one question, if I may. Would the increased purchase of bottled water help or hinder the work you do?
Well, lovely question. That there is a campaign at the moment to get people to drink draft for lots of reasons. Your own pockets is a pretty good reason. And we do blind testing, we do focus groups. We find that people actually prefer draft than many of the bottled waters. So it's about convenience, it's about habit, and people, I think, have got into habit. We're looking very seriously at sponsoring water fountains in town. I've seen information about installing them on railway stations. I think that will follow, and I think people demanding in restaurants a glass of water and refusing to pay for it should increase and more power.
Thank you very much. Who's supposed to give the word thanks?
Good question.
He's not here, so you go.
I will. I wasn't. No, that's not very fast. It's really under the belt. No, I think we've had a very, very informative talk on something that is so essential to life in all of us, and quite rightly. I often wonder why can't we drink water straight out of the tap? Surely that is as clean as... I come from that part of the world in India where water isn't very clean, but people there tend to either boil it or they have filters. And when we travel from here to there. But here it's very safe. But what is amazing is that you are looking that far forward into the lives of the population and catering for that.
It's because I didn't bring enough, but just on that point, I brought only 4 25-year plan. which is on the floor.
That'll be interesting.
So perhaps it could be passed.
No, we shall have one on each table.
We always put a decimal place between the two.
Always fascinating because it's
Perhaps that can go wrong.
always the case. Water is something you take for granted. It's only when it's in short supply that you people come to our forefront. Thank you very much for a very, very